Welcome everybody. In this episode, we're going to learn how to add to our list in React. So we have a bunch of employees. How can we make a new employee show up in that list? And I know what you're probably thinking. Did I slob on myself? Yeah, okay, I did. All right, drinking is a hard task, and you're just going to have to deal with that. Okay, nobody's perfect, like you. So let's just get started, okay? As for a quick preview of what you might expect from this app, first off, we're going to need an image URL. We can go in and add an employee, give them a name, some role, I don't know, bank teller, sure. Paste a URL, hit add, and they instantly show up on the page. And of course you can go in here and change this, give them a new name, update, and it shows up on the page. So we built the edit capability in the previous episodes, so be sure to check those out if you're interested. And if you want to jump in right where we're at to add this new employee button, you don't have to go through the whole series if you don't want, because you can just check out a certain commit in the repo. So we are at finish edit modal, and here is the URL if you want to access that. It's a little tiny, so I'm going to go ahead and zoom in a bit for you guys in this episode. And where do we even get started? Well, first off, let's just clean up a little bit. We're not going to need the employee component for this video. Yeah, we're still going to use it as is, but we're not going to modify it, because when we add an employee, it's not associated with any individual employee. So that add button is not going to go inside of the employee component. This is a bit different than these buttons, which are in every single one of these employee components. So what we're going to do is we're going to close out of employee for right now. And inside of our components, we're going to create a new file. And this is going to be quite similar to edit employee. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to click edit and copy paste. And then what we're going to do is we're just going to rename this to add employee. And we'll just go in here and change some of the code. So obviously first this is going to be called add employee, and that's going to change the export at the bottom as well. Add employee. Great. Now the main difference here is that with the edit component, the values for the employee are pre-filled. The add employee is not going to have any default values. You saw in the example there was like a grayed out text to show as an example, which I'll show you how to do that, but we're not going to preload any data. This means that these values here, props.name, we're not going to want to use those, and instead we'll just go with an empty string. And you'll probably want to use an empty string versus nothing. If you want, after this video, you can try changing that and you'll see a warning in the console explaining why. All right, now let's change the text of the button and put it on app.js. We're not going to need any other files, I don't think, for now, so we'll just go ahead and shut that. And we're going to change this to plus add employee. Now that we have this button here, let's figure out where to put this inside of app.js. We want it to be after all of the employees, so you can see this div here surrounds all the employees, so we could put it right here, and we will just say add employee and close it like so. That also imported, so you want to make sure you have that at the top from /components/add employee. All right, so that should be somewhat right. Let's scroll back to the site and see what we got. We have this add employee button over here. It does pop up a modal. It's just not exactly what we want. Maybe we want it to be centered, and I actually prefer the look and feel of these buttons versus these rounded ones down here. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to copy the styling for those buttons, which should be down at the bottom here. So we have button with these class names, so we'll just take this. I'm actually going to take this one because I want the purple color, but you could change it to whatever color you wish. And these are the classes we're going to use for our button at the top. So let's find that, and we will just replace all of these classes here. Yikes, that's a lot. All right, we'll paste that there and save. Take a look at it, and there we go. We have the add employee here. Now we just have to figure out how to center it. What we can do is say mx-auto, so margin on the x-axis to be automatic, and I think for this we will need to make this block. Save. There we go. If you want it to be a bit more spaced out, you can add margin, so M2, and that'll push it down just a little bit. All right, so far it's looking pretty good. We just want to change some of this text, so instead of update employee, it says add employee, so let's go into add employee. We'll search for update and replace that with add. And we'll have to deal with the function later when we deal with the functionality. For now, let's just update the text on the modal. Take a look. And there we go. Next up, we're going to add the image input. So we'll go back, find the input up here that we can just copy as an example. So I'm going to take the label and the input. So this entire div right here will include both of those. So I'm going to copy that, and we're just going to go down to the next line and paste it, change the value to image, the label, and then what we can do is change the for to img and change the ID to match that img. So this is what it's going to look like right here. And just to be very specific, we want to say image URL. We're not dealing with image uploads right now, so we'll just want to make sure we take a URL. Now, as for getting an example value here for people to see, that's called a placeholder. So you can go in here and add a placeholder and put some URL, or you could make it more specific to an image URL. This will do for me. And then I'm going to do the same thing for the other two inputs. So we'll add one here. We'll say bank teller. And we'll add one right here. There we go. So we added values, and those should show up in a light gray here. Taking a look at the padding, if you go into the classes, there's a padding x4. If we change this to a 3, we can take a look how that makes a difference. I'll scoot the name over just a little bit, which I just think it looks a little better. This seems oddly padded, so you can adjust how you wish. I'm going to go with 3, but yeah, just some practice getting some changes into the classes and getting familiar with the padding. So we'll change all of these to 3. Take a quick look how that looks. Overall, not too bad. Now we just have to figure out how to actually make this show up in the employee list. So similar to how when we had the edit employee, we took a function from app.js and we passed that down through the components. We're going to do the same thing, but this time we don't have to go through the employee component, we just go direct. So let's define a function up in app.js and pass that as a property. So here I am over in app.js. We're going to define a new function, new employee. Most likely you're not going to need to pass in an ID as the employee doesn't already exist, so we can just generate one, but we are going to need the name, the role, and the image. And now inside of here, we have to set our employees list, and inside of here, we want to basically take the existing employees plus an additional employee. So the way you do that is you make an array, and then you say ... employees. So that'll take each employee and put it in that list. And then we just need to add a new element to the array here. So we'll say new employee. Where does this new employee come from? Well, we're actually going to create that right here. So new employee is equal to something. If you want to take a second and guess, go ahead, but I'm going to type it out now. It's going to be an object with the ID, the name, the role, and the image. Basically, we just have to copy this structure up here, defining a new one down here. So the ID, well, these ones are just hard-coded values. Imagine these are coming from a database. So for creating a new employee, you would probably rely on the database to do that. For now, we're just going to use the UUID v4 that we used in an earlier episode. So again, for this, you're going to need to import this here, making sure to npm install UUID. So this is going to generate a random string of characters, and that'll do for now for the ID. The name, that's going to come from the name parameter. Same thing for the rest of these here. And it is smart enough to know that this is the property on this new object, and this is the parameter. You can see the highlighting there. Now, this function is defined in app.js, but it's not being used anywhere. So what we need to do is when we have the add employee button, we need to pass it as a prop. So we'll say new employee is equal to new employee, the function here. And we're not invoking it, just as a reminder, we're just putting the name of the function. Now that should be available inside of add employee. So on form submission, scroll up to where the form is submitted. On submit, first thing, this handle close, we dealt with that in the last video. So I was thinking about this. You could actually, if you wanted to get that out of the on submit, it doesn't matter, it's probably fine if it's there, but we could just take this down to the button, and I think this was how it was originally set up. I just changed it at some point. So we'll just clean this up, move it down to the button down here. And we just want the name of the function. So there we go, handle close. All right, now we're back at the form submission. So e.prevent default to prevent a refresh, and then props, get rid of update and replace it with new employee, passing in name, role, and image. Now for image, I'm going to keep track of that value the same way we're doing it up here. So I'm just going to copy this, paste it, and replace this with image and set image. This is going to be tied to the image input down below, which I don't think I ever updated what the value was pointing to. So this third one here, we need to replace it with image, changing the set to set image. Okay, I think that might be everything, but there's like a 95% chance I screwed something up. So let's try it again. New employee is not defined on line 60. Alrighty. Let's go back and take a look. We just need to say const, and then on 95 as well. So let's take a look there. 95. The function name is not being recognized. Just need to lowercase this in. There we go. Okay, now the page should be working. Let's try to see if the functionality is there. John Smith, bank guy. And for the image URL, you can actually close out of this and copy an image address. And when you add employee, all that data is going to stay there. Paste, add, and it shows up. That took quite a bit of jumping around, and we're not actually quite done. But so far it's looking pretty good. You see, here's a problem. If we go to add a new employee, all that data is still there. So we don't want to be able to just do this. We want this to refresh every time we add an employee, so that we're not just adding the same thing each time. And we also don't have to go in here and delete the old values. So all we have to do is reset the state when we click the add button. If you want to try and do that, go ahead and give it a shot. What you're going to do is you're going to go into add employee, and each one of these states can be reset on form submission or on the add button click. I'm going to do it in the form submission since we've already been working with that. So right here, we can just say after the e.prevent default, set name to empty string, set role to an empty string, and set image to an empty string. There we go. Now let's give it a try. We'll add one of them here, and then let's click add employee again, and you can see the information has been removed. So that was quite a long video, but hopefully you got it all figured out. If not, feel free to rewatch it. And stay tuned for the next episode. I think we're going to be doing something new. That's going to be really cool. We're going to learn some more concepts of React. Peace out and subscribe.